Hey everybody, welcome to the GameChanger Lacrosse Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Evoli. The GameChanger Lacrosse Podcast is about talking to people who have dedicated their life to the game of lacrosse and learning about who they are, how they got to where they are today, and what they do to improve themselves and their teams. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at GC Sports, and if you're a coach or a parent, check out GameChanger Team Manager in the App Store. You can ditch the emails and spreadsheets. The free GameChanger Team Manager app streamlines communication, scheduling, and live scoring into one easy-to-use app. GameChanger Team Manager is 100% free for your entire team. Learn more at gc.com/team manager or search for GameChanger Team Manager in the App Store. Today on the show, we have Andrew McMinn. Coach McMinn graduated from Providence University. During his time at Providence, he was a standout goalie. He ranked in the top 10 in Division I for goals against and goals per game. After graduating from Providence, he went on to coach at Robert Morris University, where he's now on his 13th season. This is his 7th as a head coach. Last season, Robert Morris made its 5th Northeast Conference appearance, its 4th under Coach McMinn. He was also named Northeast Conference Coach of the Year in 2012 and 2017. Coach and I got a chance to talk about a lot of things like personal accountability, goal setting, having fun in practice, how they're prepping for rule changes, attitude, and much more. Here's my interview with Coach McMinn. Coach McMinn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on, but let's get started like I always do. How'd you get started playing lacrosse?
Well, growing up in Pittsburgh wasn't exactly a hotbed area, but was fortunate to just have some connections in the area of people that had actually come from more of the Baltimore region. That, of course, where the game was being played at a much more frequent and higher level back then, and people that moved into the neighborhood just kind of introduced the game to some of us. And, luckily for us, it was at a young age where, we were picking up sticks when we were in 4th and 5th grade.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what did you do, being in an area that's not typically a hotbed like Pittsburgh, what were some of the things that you did to get better?
Well, we were very fortunate to have quality coaching at the time. I mean, Andy Hogardner was a coach in our area that, has certainly been around the game quite a bit. And, my high school coach, who actually helped us in youth at the time before he was the high school coach, was a Johns Hopkins grad from the 70s that played on those teams and won national championships. And, it was certainly pretty, lucky to have those types of resources and coaches in the area when, like I said, it wasn't an area that had a lot of those people, but, the few that were around could certainly, teach the game at a very high level, and we benefited because of that. But, a lot of it too was just, in an area like ours, was putting in the work on your own on the side and, trying to keep the skill work up to speed and, doing what we've all done growing up to try to play the game at the highest level.
Right. And so, around this time, what other sports were you playing?
I grew up, primarily wrestling, from a very young age. I'd wrestled all the way through the end of high school and, kind of for a long time expected that that's what I was going to do in college, and played all sports growing up. The ones that I kept with in high school were wrestling, football, and lacrosse after having to kind of narrow things down to, to one sport per season.
Right.
And lacrosse and wrestling both kind of took more of a front seat as I moved throughout high school. And, at the time I was in my junior year, was thinking more towards wrestling. And then, fortunately back then it was, more than feasible to still get recruitment, as a senior in high school. So, I benefited from just being able to kind of slow play the process. And, once I decided lacrosse was more of the passion and where I wanted to move forward into college, I had some opportunities pop up to allow that to happen.
And what was it that made you realize that lacrosse was the thing that you wanted to pursue?
I think a lot of the things that we all fall in love with the game. I just think it's such a dynamic game that, first and foremost teaches us so much in life, just with the way that the game is played. And, through experiences that I had dealt with in life, lacrosse was always kind of just my main outlet. And, wrestling was probably more of an anger outlet at times. And I certainly loved wrestling, but, the passion for me just really started kind of picking up more and more towards the end of high school with lacrosse, where, that was where I realized I kind of more so went to my quote unquote happy place. And, just always, was that game to me that just gave me that feeling, where wrestling, I think with a lot of people in wrestling, as you get more and more into your career, it starts really kind of, weighing on you.
Right.
Where my passion for wrestling was, starting to fade at the same time that my passion for lacrosse really started picking up. But
right.
I've always loved the game, and it was that place that, took me somewhere else, and just, again, gave me that feeling that, obviously all sports give, but, lacrosse is kind of always unique to me in that sense, and that's why I stuck with it.
Right. Yeah, so just one more question before we get on to your college days. So I'm curious, did you feel like there was anything from wrestling that helped you with your lacrosse game at all? We've had a few wrestlers on the show, but not a lot. So I'm always curious if there's any, skills or lessons that you take over from one sport to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wrestling my whole life, I certainly took a lot from it, and I think discipline above everything else, and also just ownership and accountability. I think that's obviously important with being successful in anything, and wrestling, being a one-on-one sport, and one that kind of tests your manhood up against the guy across from you, is one that it's hard to run from your defeats, and
right.
Hard to make excuses. And I think just learning that ownership and accountability as a kid and growing up in that sport, was certainly something that I applied in all sports. And as I got into college and into my playing career there, it was something, being a goalie, almost the same situation. It's, I guess you can't point the finger at defensemen, but at the end of the day, you're the one that let the ball in the back of the cage. So
right.
really just the lessons that, wrestling teaches you from a one-on-one component, and, again, just that ownership and accountability standpoint.
Right. So what ultimately made you decide on Providence to continue your lacrosse career?
It was, like I said, I waited till my senior year before I was really looking at schools for lacrosse instead of wrestling. And, Providence, after taking had ended up taking 3 lacrosse visits. And for me, it was really more of a gut feeling. And I think like anything in life, it's, about the people that you're around, and, just really felt comfortable with the people there above the other places that I had visited. And, just feeling like the guys that were going to be teammates with me, and, who I was going to be spending my time with, were the right guys. And, of course, I was looking for academics and trying to, get the most out of that situation, and, have a playing career somewhere that I knew the team could be successful. But really it was more about just the feeling that I had with the people that were there. And, that was what made the most sense to me.
Right. And so that first semester when you got on campus, did you feel like it was a fit right away, or was there any sort of, issues transitioning to college?
No, there was certainly, we obviously now as coaches talk to our freshmen about it a lot. You're always going to have those transition issues, and, you're going away from home for the first time, and I knew I wanted to get farther away. And, certainly kind of realizing that, that people in different places are obviously different. And, it's funny that those were things that kind of seemed like obstacles early on in my career, and, things that made it seem like it wasn't the right place at times. And, by the end of my career there, the things that I look back on and appreciated the most, that I met people from all walks of life, and that came from different places, and, had different backgrounds than me. But, early on, there was certainly the growing pains, I think, like most of us go through as freshmen, especially, where there's just the adjustment period, and the hard work and the commitment, and, the things that you didn't necessarily know what were going to be coming your way, and just being able to try to roll on the fly with it all. So certainly the adjustment period was one that took a lot of freshman year, but, by the end, like I said, a lot of those things you ironically look back and probably appreciate more than anything.
Right. Yeah. So with that in mind, when you have, new freshmen that come in, how do you guys speak to these kids who might be having a tough transition?
Yeah, we talk to them, pretty proactively. At least we try to. We have a lot of those talks even in the first and second weeks, where we know guys are kind of on cloud 9. We always talk about how you go through that roller coaster when you first get in, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm away from my parents, and, this is great. All the guys seem awesome, and I'm being accepted with the team, and, you feel really good. And then those, second, third, fourth months start to set in, where, you've been putting in a lot of hard work and having to manage things on your own, and, manage your time on your own, and all of a sudden you start getting a little bit more homesick, and things aren't going quite as well. And then I think by the time you get to the end of your freshman year, and especially when you come back that sophomore year where you kind of know what to expect, it's a swing back in that positive direction. But we do try to just tell the guys proactively, hey, that's stuff that you have to expect. It's it's life, and it's not going to be perfect for you at all times. And you're setting that tone for yourself, especially early on when things get tough, when you are on your own for the first time. Kind of how you're going to respond to those situations. And
right.
Again, as coaches, obviously we're trying to use this game to prepare them for life and what life can throw at you as much as we possibly can. And talk about how on the field, even though sometimes things seem serious, it's pretty simple way to learn lessons out there when it's just throwing and catching a lacrosse ball.
Right.
But we try to keep keeping the guys' ears throughout their freshman year with just telling them, hey, that's some of the stuff that you have to expect, and there's going to be adversity. And even though you love the guys when you first get here, 6 months in, you're going to look and say, wait a second, I have friends from home that I've known for 15 years. I'm not as close with these guys as them, and that's kind of natural. It's
right.
part of the process, and we try to just prepare them for that and to expect it, and to more so have the coping mechanisms to deal with it, and then obviously come out on the other side.
Right. Definitely. So I want to go back to the start of your coaching career. So, what made you want to start coaching?
Well, my honest answer would be that I really had no idea what I wanted to do after college. And I had originally gotten on board with the English Lacrosse Association. I was going to go over to England for a year, which sounded like a pretty cool gig to delay that process of figuring out what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was home that summer, kind of waiting to leave, I had spoke with Coach Davis, Bear Davis, who was the head coach of our program at the time. And
right.
He knew I was back in the area, and he was pretty short-staffed at the time, especially relative to Division I programs. And, got on board with him and decided to give it a shot, and, more so was gearing again towards a grad school program and delaying things a little bit.
Right.
And then before I knew it, I just fell in love with coaching and said, hey, if I can do this for a living and, make a career out of it, then why not?
Right. So when you first took the job, you weren't necessarily thinking about it as a career. At what point did you start thinking like, hey, this might be something that I can do long term?
I mean, there was definitely a process before, getting to that final decision. I mean, my first year feeling it out was certainly, kind of back and forth, and I was volunteering at the time, and obviously you get out of college and you have some friends that are starting to pick up their first jobs and, starting to financially have a little bit of success on an independent level. And, that certainly makes you question when you're sitting there not making money and not getting a paycheck and,
right.
Looking around you to see the people that are. But, again, I kind of kept telling myself that the passion was number one. And, if I pursue the passion, then hopefully the money would eventually come. And, the first year or two, I would say, was certainly kind of a feeling out process of, hey, is this going to be worth it? But, again, I always came back to just having such joy and doing this that, I realized that if I stuck to it, then, the financial part would hopefully take care of itself.
Right. So looking back, what would you say the biggest lessons are from those first few years, where you're not making a lot of money, or maybe you're not making any money at all? Sort of, what were the biggest surprises? What were the biggest lessons looking back?
I think, first and foremost, follow your passion, which again, it's easy to say, but, I was fortunate that, with having my family in the area that, I could get by with, I wasn't worried about paying like a New York City rent with being a volunteer,
right.
in a place in Pittsburgh. So, I was fortunate to financially be able to swing it for a good amount of time there before I did start getting paid and get on board as a paid assistant. But, just following the passion again, it always just made more sense to me, throughout life growing up and once I had to make the decision of what to do for a living to try to do something that you love. And that to me was always more important than money. And, once I realized, what the job truly entailed, just fell in love with it that much more. Originally I thought it was about, showing up on the field for 2 hours and focusing on the game of lacrosse and the game of lacrosse only. And, then realizing kind of, what it meant to me in my playing career and what mattered most. And, a lot of that was just the off the field stuff and the relationships and the life lessons and learning how to deal with a lot of different things that you might not have to deal with as a regular student, and realized that I could pass more so of that experience on to guys, and then how much more, thorough the job actually was than I originally thought.
Right.
And that was when it kind of just all came together for me, that I was like, I just, have the passion to do this every day.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, the key thing to remember when you talk about, chasing after or doing the thing or following the thing that you love is that sort of similar to what you were saying, about that first year in college, is it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be fun. It's not always going to seem like things are going your way. But ultimately, over the long term, you need to sort of overcome those days, and that's when things get better and better and better, in the long run.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So tell us, how did the head coaching position become available at RMU?
Yeah, I was here, under Coach Davis for 7 years, and going into that 7th year, I believe it was that he had been approached with another opportunity, and it was certainly hard for him stepping away from the program after starting it, and being here from the grassroots up. But felt that for his family and the situation that he was offered, that it was better for him. And it was timing wise, kind of crunch time. It was August when he had taken that position and decided to step away. So I was an interim head coach for the kind of first month and a half of fall ball there, while we went through the interview process, and then got named the head coach during the fall of 2011. So again, just very fortunate that I kind of stuck it out here as an assistant, and that opportunity opened up for me just by, kind of sticking the course, and wasn't something I said, hey, it wasn't my goal to be a head coach, or I wasn't seeking to be a head coach at the time, but,
right.
I certainly felt that under Coach Davis, he had done a great job of just preparing me and involving me in all aspects of the program, that, when he did decide to take another opportunity, I felt pretty prepared, under him and his guidance to take over and be a head coach.
Right, right. And so how did you view that transition, right? When you're named head coach, how do you approach setting the tone? Is it more a continuation of, Coach Davis's program, or did you take it upon yourself to maybe set a different tone or do things, slightly differently from the way they were previously done?
Yeah, my approach was certainly, going to continue to be what it was. As an assistant, certainly still felt like I had a voice in the room per se, and didn't feel like I needed to change who I was or the way that I did things once I did, become the head coach. But, I certainly had, certain things that I was going to kind of put my touches on and do a little bit differently. But, again, from especially being here from the start of the program, from the second year, and having the opportunity with Coach Davis to have a say over a lot of things. We really established the identity of the program together back then in 2005, 2006. And, it wasn't like I felt that, I wasn't able to weigh in on kind of who we wanted to be and how we did things. So,
right.
when I kind of bumped up in position, it was more so, hey, let's just keep doing what we're doing and continuing to move in the same direction that we have been. And, didn't really feel like I necessarily had to change my approach, like I said, just because of changing titles. And that was a big thing we've always pushed across in our program as well, is just, we don't really look at the titles. We try to have everybody have a say at the table. And, because of that, I didn't feel like it was, a significant role change by any means when I was taking over the program.
Right. Yeah. So you felt like it was a more or less a natural transition. Did you feel like it was a natural transition for the players as well?
I'd like to think so. I'm not sure if that I'll give you the same answers, but I certainly just, again, kind of just picked up right where we had left off, and, did a lot of the same things that we had been doing. So, I would think that from their standpoint, and even going through the interim process, it was, a little bit dicey when you're coaching through the fall ball season and you're not sure if you're going to continue with the team. But, I just assured them that, the staff was all going to bump up in position. We were going to keep the current staff in place, and, things would continue on kind of as they had been already. So, I think we certainly made the attempt on our end to make it as smooth as possible with not having any dramatic changes when that did take place. And, I'd like to think they certainly kind of felt that way as well.
Right, right. And so how do you guys, this is the beginning of the season. How do you guys approach, sort of each new season? Are there new goals that you guys are trying to achieve? or sort of, how are you guys thinking about, progressing each year?
Yeah, I mean, we have the guys come, they take a lot of ownership over that process. And, with a lot of the things that we do, that's a theme as we're trying to get the guys, again, to have say in how we do things and what we do. And, we really feel that from the goal setting standpoint, a lot of that does have to come from them. And every year we have a system in place with how we do our individual goals and meetings on those, and we do the team goals and meet throughout the season on those. And, it starts with them without the coaches in the room, and we split the categories up per se into, lacrosse, academics, and then character. Mm-hmm. And they do their individual goals in those areas, and then they do the team goals in those areas. And, we kind of help facilitate the whole process, but, we really want the material to come from them with what they're trying to accomplish on a year-to-year basis. And, right. Obviously, coming off of last year, we had kind of unprecedented success with getting to the tournament and, being able to make a little bit of a run there. And we were pretty disappointed to not move on further. And I think our guys knew that we were more than capable of it. And mm-hmm. I think that certainly just kind of picked up where we left off with a lot of returners this year of guys that are hungry and, we want to advance further in the NCAA tournament. So I think especially when you start off as a new program where you really see the growth from, not going through a full season of not winning a single game, mm-hmm. Then having to make those just gradual improvements year to year, it is a little bit more, kind of natural, I think, for the guys to say, hey, let's now take it to the next step, because there is still just a short history and, a lot of connection from the start of the program until now. So right. It's not something that we as coaches say, hey, now we got to raise the bar and go a little bit further, because, again, we want the guys really, coming up with that stuff on their own with what's going to mean the most to them with what they want to accomplish on and off the field.
Right. And if you can, not to put you too much on the spot, but if you can you give an example of some of the goals that maybe the players have set either this year or in the past, because I feel like sometimes from a goal setting perspective, it's easy to just take, the easy way out would just be like, our goal is to win a national championship, right? But, that's like everybody wants to do that. Obviously, you can't go from zero to a national championship. So, can you give an example of what some of the goals your players or the team have set?
Yeah, when we had first entered the conference into the Northeast Conference, we actually, before it was an AQ, we had won the conference outright. We were undefeated in the regular season, and since then it was kind of the goal. We lost in the tournament that year in the NEC tournament, and it had become the goal to win the NEC tournament, and especially once that AQ was available, that was kind of the obvious one to kind of put on paper from a result, a season end result standpoint. And the guys that stuck with it, it took us a few years to get there. And once that happened last year, we went into last year with that being one of the lacrosse goals that our guys had said they want to win in the NEC tournament and that we wanted to advance at least a game in the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So for this year, they're actually kind of finalizing. We had done we typically do them at the end of the fall, and then we kind of come back in the spring and hit more of like a SWOT analysis on all of it. And, really kind of refine what we want, on paper moving forward. And they're actually going to be finalizing that stuff tomorrow. But they've additionally, it's been kind of year to year that we've also added in just certain statistics, on the lacrosse goals that, we want to be able to meet with our scoring averages and goals against averages. And, from an academic standpoint, it's typically pretty simple that, they'll put a GPA for the team. And we've been around a 3.3, 3.4 GPA as a team for, a number of years consecutively now. So that's kind of been the benchmark on the results in the classroom. And then they'll add in the stuff with, with character, with community service hours and, getting involved with different groups and helping out on campus as much as we possibly can. So.
Right. And did I hear you right? You guys do a SWOT analysis as well?
We do, yeah. They finalize their goals at the end of the fall, and then we come back, and that's kind of our first two meetings that we hash out when they get back for the second semester. Mm-hmm. We just go through all of our academic goals, all of our character goals, all of our lacrosse goals, and do a SWOT analysis as a team with everybody in the room on all of them. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of discuss through that, and then obviously have that to paper as well that, that we can kind of reference back on throughout the year.
Right. And refresh my memory. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Is that right?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's I wanted to make sure I say that for anybody who's listening. It's something I've resisted for a while, but since I've been doing it for maybe the past 2 or 3 years, I find those things incredibly helpful. So I'd recommend anybody who's listening to sort of look that up and learn more about them. But yeah, I want to jump a little bit into sort of the day to day for you guys. Can you walk us through what a typical in season practice is for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly pride ourselves in the skill set side of things, and we designate a lot of time at the beginning of practice, especially towards just skill development, where we're even getting just partner passing in for the first 10 to 15 minutes on most days. I mean, at least 3-4 days a week, because we've found that there's a lot of stick work drills that we run that by the time you're done with an 8-9 minute drill, the guys aren't truly getting that many touches on an individual basis, where they might get 2 passes per minute in that drill, where just getting on the hash marks and getting the partner and throwing the ball back and forth, a lot of times at least you're getting the repetitions in. So we'll start out that way, and we get creative so that the guys can have fun with that stuff too, where we're throwing behind the backs, and the short sticks will go one hand underhand, and we'll throw shovel passes. And again, we want them to be creative with their skill sets and to have high level skill sets, obviously. So, we start off with that pretty consistently, and then we'll get into some more comprehensive stick work drills where it's ground balls and quick ball movement, and sometimes a little bit more position specific, as we'll break up into positions. And from there, we really also pride ourselves in the transition game and playing the game at a fast pace. So we always want to establish those things first and foremost throughout the first half of our practice. And, once we get done with the skill sets that we ideally have as clean of transition drills as we can, we get into the number build-ups all the way up from, 2v1s up until 6v5s. And, we'll work those drills in, and then, more so with 6v6 and even number situations, we'll do some breakdowns of smaller numbers and large groups, and or more groups, I should say, with smaller numbers in those groups, and then build up to 6v6 in the same type of way. And overall, from start to finish, we typically try to keep them for no more than an hour and a half, or at tops like an hour and 40 minutes.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been hearing more and more as I talk to coaches, they try to keep it into that 90-minute mark, which is crazy to me, because that would never happen when I was in college. But I'm curious, to one thing that you said in the beginning, which I think is really smart, but maybe like conservative coaches or coaches would be, worried about, breaking things up and then working on behind the backs and things like that in practice. I think that makes a lot of sense to do that, so that the kids are having fun. And plus, I think that's, that's something that you need to have in your skill set when you're playing lacrosse. It becomes valuable in ways, for not just showboating, but, to get out of certain tough situations. But how do you make sure that those drills, when the kids are throwing behind the back, that things don't get out of control and that they're not sort of degrading the fundamentals?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we certainly have a rhyme or a reason. I mean, there's a time and place for when those plays should be made and when they shouldn't be made. And even from the fundamental standpoint for, shooting obviously is an easy example. We want our guys still increasing their angle, where there's times where obviously, it's not going to make sense to throw a behind the back pass, but, we'll have guys that are behind the back shot, but we'll have guys that, catch in tight and, might hit a more of a dazzling finish with an around the world, so to speak. And, it actually makes sense to do it. And, there's, and we'll show those highlights to high school coaches or, whoever. They're like, oh, our guys can't do that. And we're like, well, we work on it. It's not, our guys didn't naturally just show up and know how to do that stuff. I mean, we try to equip them with those skill sets and then more so police them on when it's time to use them.
Right. Yeah, that's a key point that I feel like I bring up a lot on this podcast. Is when I was growing up, I practiced around the back and around the world, but in my head it was mostly because, hey, this is going to make me stand out, or this is going to make me look good on the field. I didn't realize until later on in my career, and even after my career, where around the back is absolutely an essential part of the game. And even in some ways, it's very fundamental because it gets you a better angle. And I think if players start thinking about that in sort of the way that you just described it, people will be a more well-rounded player because it gets you out of tough positions, and you can use it to your advantage if it's used correctly. So if you can, let's say you have a game on Saturday. Can you walk us through your week and how you're preparing for upcoming opponents? Like, what are you doing day by day?
For sure, it's easy because we do have a game on Saturday, so I can walk you through exactly what we did this week. But throughout the season, it's pretty typical that Monday, Tuesday, we're really keeping the focus primarily on ourselves. Mondays we only have 2 weeks this year where we play a weekday game. We've always tried to start early to really space things out and mainly play on Saturdays so that our weeks are pretty similar. Right. But with that being the case, a Monday, is more the film work from the previous game, talking about our learning points with what we want to improve upon. They'll hit a workout that day, and then we'll just be on the field for about 45 minutes with a couple drills that are specific to the things that we went over in film. Mm-hmm. Tuesday is kind of continuing in that same direction where we're still trying to get the sticks going. We're trying to get a lot of reps. We're running a lot of transition game, and just really again just doing the things that we do regardless of the situation or who we're playing. And then Wednesdays we'll typically put in the scout. We still, even with putting in a scout on Wednesday, if I had to do a percentage breakdown, I'd say throughout the whole week, even in season, 80% of our focus remains on ourselves. Where 20% will more so be just the focus of the opponent with some nuances that we want to make sure that we're prepared for. But even with putting in the scout on Wednesday, we go out, and then a lot of our practice is really still based on, playing the game that we want to play the game, the way that we want to play the game. And, it's more 6v6 that we'll start breaking down on each side to do some scout things, a little bit more walkthrough just to get, familiar with what we're trying to do for that specific opponent. And then, Thursday we'll kind of take that exact same approach with just going over a little bit of walkthrough in 6v6. But again, we're going to run drills that, that are going to help us prepare to play the way that we want to play regardless. And then Friday we dummy it down a little bit where it's a lot more on the skill set side, and again just having guys getting the touches that they need to on the sticks before the day before the game, and getting shooting reps in, and a little bit of man up man down work that's a little bit more specialized. But again, for the most part, we're still just trying to make sure that our stick works where it needs to be, and that we understand the kind of small nuances that we're looking to execute in that given week, and still just making sure that we're prepared to play the way that we want to play.
Right. Makes sense. And when you guys are looking at opponents, you say 80% of the time you're looking at yourself, but when you are looking at opponents, are you mostly looking at overall tendencies, or are you looking at individual players at all?
We are. It's a little bit of both. The one thing I actually, was always very perplexed by the whole process of putting scouting reports together for whatever reason. And, earlier in my career certainly went with the theory of more so flooding them with as much information as possible. And, right. Flooding's probably an accurate term, with what I was giving them. And I think it was a Malcolm Gladwell book I read at the time. It was Blank that talked about thin slicing. And, it was something that I kind of applied to our scouts where, the concept is, more so when you're trying to come up with a hypothesis to, take the most, the meat and bones of the situation and the things that really matter the most, as opposed to, looking at as many factors as possible to make a decision on something. And right. At the time, I was always frustrated on providing all this information to the guys that really didn't end up being very relevant in the game. Or really having much to do with the result or the impact of the game. And, literally went back through our scouting reports back then. I just said, I'm going to eliminate anything on here that would not make me play differently, if I'm a player and I'm in their shoes. And, from a personnel standpoint, we really went more towards film. And we've stuck with that ever since, where we just give the guys like a 3-minute clip on the attackman and 3-minute clips on the defenseman, where they can kind of watch that on their own. Right. And took out some, I just remember the standard things that I'm sure a lot of people still have on their scouting reports now, but, big, strong athlete, good change of direction, likes to dodge up to 5-and-5, where, nobody's approaching their attackman going, oh, this is the guy that has good change of direction. He's a big, strong athlete that likes to dodge up to 5 and 5.
Right.
For stuff like that, I just literally went through and I was like, yeah, this is kind of useless information in my opinion. And, really just tried to get to the skinny of things. So we did gear a lot more towards the tendencies. And again, that's kind of our approach still to this day is, more so look at where teams like to shoot the ball, or they, when they dodge it at the midfield, are they shooting more off the dodge? Are they putting the ball through X? Are they returning it back up top? Or are they looking to feed the ball inside?
Right.
And kind of more so really getting to the nitty gritty of what teams' tendencies are on both sides of the ball, and then trying to, to try to work against that. So it's,
makes sense.
Certainly dummied down more now, with our approach to the way we do things in the way that we used to. And again, from the personnel side, we have the luxury of being able to clip up the film and just give that to the guys, and they can have it at their disposal there. So
right, makes sense. So I'm curious, how have you guys sort of approached the big rule changes for this year? What are you guys doing differently? Sort of let's start with the 80-second shot clock. Are you guys doing anything different in practice, to make sure the team's prepared, or is it more of the same?
Yeah, it's more of the same. I mean, with our style, again, it was very rare that we were getting that far into possessions as it was.
Right.
We certainly didn't try to come up with answers before going through the feeling out process. So we started and just said, hey, let's not even give the guys any direction. Let's just start playing. We in the fall started throwing the shot clock on for scrimmages without saying anything.
Right.
And we were like, let's just kind of see how this plays out, and then we'll adjust as we need to. And the first 2 or 3 times that we scrimmaged with a shot clock and did a full regulation scrimmage, I think we maybe had one violation.
Right.
So for us, it was definitely more of the same of, let's just kind of keep doing what we're doing, where we're going to attack in transition. We're going to attack in the early phases of possession, and then there's still enough time to get organized after that and get on the same page to try to attack and settle. But because of just the trial and error of putting it on and letting our guys kind of do their thing before we really had a plan in place, we just came more and more to the conclusion that, hey, we can kind of just keep playing the way that we're playing. So for us, it really hasn't been a significant impact.
Right. Makes sense. And what about the dive? Have you guys proactively, adjusted to that, or is that, sort of the same thing? You just, let your players play, let them figure it out?
We have, just to put a little bit of emphasis behind it, we have, isolated some segments just to have them have some fun with it. And, we'll put a pad out on the field, more of like a mattress pad out on the field in front of the crease, and, have the attackman just at least work on the technique and, where we want them actually leaving the ground and where we want them landing, and, getting some reps with it, because obviously it's something that can, without question be used to your advantage. And, we want them to get the experience of doing it, so that way when those opportunities pop up in a game, they've at least had the muscle memory of going through those. It's, not something that we're saying, hey, we're really going to try to do this as much as we can. But again, we want the guys to be equipped with it. And, just like the plays where you are throwing it behind the back pass, if it means you're getting an open lane to do so, or you're throwing a one-handed flip, or if it makes sense to do so. Those are plays I think that we all, feel are fun plays, and, the ones that are fun to watch.
Right. Makes sense. And so one more question on, your preparation. I'm curious about your headspace, sort of before a game as a head coach. What are you yourself trying to do to prepare for an upcoming opponent? How are you thinking about a game? What do you try to get in your head to make sure that you as a head coach are ready to go?
Yeah, above everything else, we talked to the guys about this, but just trying to keep things consistent. We want to make sure that we're getting ourselves better every day. And again, we really try to keep the focus on us and what we're doing, and, our attitude and our effort and how we're playing the game. And, because of that, we don't want to act like game day is some completely different thing. Our approach and my approach individually on game days is more so to just kind of have the exact same demeanor that we have during practice, which, I think our culture and our team, we've established more of a loose demeanor, but also very focused. We expect the guys to, to be locked in, but to also enjoy themselves. And we establish that in practice. And, I even tell our staff and practice sometimes, just a little reminder. I'm like, hey, this is game day, treat it like game day. What are we going to be doing on Saturday?
Right.
And then same thing as we're going into a Saturday, it's like, hey, just another day of practice, just to, constantly kind of bring the guys down and up as they need to just stay on that consistent path of getting ourselves better and focusing on the things that we can control.
Right. Makes sense. So I wanna touch on real quickly recruiting for any young players that might be listening. Sort of the big question is, if you're a young player, how do you recommend these kids get noticed or stand out?
Above everything else, I would certainly say attitude. I mean, I think that's what, is obviously the foundation for anybody to be successful regardless of what they're doing. And we really try to do our best to evaluate the attitude and the effort of guys, at all times. Because as we all know, I mean, there's the quote unquote superstar recruits that, might not even last past the first semester somewhere,
right.
And it's not because of their skill set, it's because of the attitude or, the inability to push through a situation or what have you. And, on the flip side, there's all the guys that, weren't recruited. I mean, we've had All-Americans come through our program that weren't recruited by a single other Division I program. And, to us, I think it's, really trying to find those intangibles of the guys that you can tell just love to play the game. They have fun with it. They work hard, good teammates. I mean, all the things that, we all want to say, but, again, there's the guys that possess it and they show that they have that when you watch them play. And, we want to have guys that are skilled and, can play the game at a high level and obviously have IQ, high IQ and can do all the things that we all want. But, if the attitude's not going to be there or, you're going to show that you're the guy putting his palms up to the ref or yelling back at a coach or a teammate or blaming somebody and, carrying yourself in that type of way, then, we really do have it black and white. I mean, I tell our guys it's just, zero tolerance. I'm like, if we're recruiting two guys and one of them's doing that and one of them's not, it's not about who's better at that point.
Right.
We're going to take the guy that displays the attitude that we want to see and, works the way that we want our guys to work and shows a passion to play the game. So I think that's always first and foremost. And, again, I think that comes much more into play once you get to Division I or you get to the next level of playing. I mean, everybody's got some level of talent, and we just truly buy into the fact that those intangibles are what's going to separate one guy from the next. And we try to evaluate that as much as we can in the recruiting process. So,
right. Makes sense. So if you're a young kid and, you want to reach out to a coach, what do you recommend they do when they reach out? Is it the email? Do they send a highlight reel, a full game? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we have to see guys play. We want to evaluate who they are as players on the field, and then we get into more so the character evaluation that we can see, like I just mentioned, on the field, and then obviously trying to figure out some of those things in conversation. But it's crucial that, you provide the opportunities that we would have to be able to evaluate you on the field. So, setting the schedule, I mean, guys will attach their spring schedules, summer schedules, where we know exactly, where they're going to be. And that's always the easiest way to ensure that we could get somewhere to see you play is provide those schedules in advance. And with film, quite honestly, I think everybody would have a different answer for this one. I mean, we're okay with highlight films. Typically, I mean, just from a time standpoint, 2 or 3 minutes is going to give us a pretty good look at a kid with whether or not we feel that he has the skill set and, at least does the things well enough on film that we would want to continue recruitment. I never mind. I mean, providing a full game is not a bad thing. I have a hard time thinking that anybody would have the time to watch every single recruit's full game if they were all sending them. I have sat and watched through some people's games a little bit here and there when they send them over, but again, a highlight's kind of an efficient way of at least, getting our original thought on whether or not we want to move forward beyond that. Because if you're putting all your best plays together and we don't like you, then it's probably obvious at that point we might tell you it's best to go in a different direction. But, in the opposite regard, if you put something together that we can at least see, hey, yeah, this guy shows that on film he's got the skill set we're looking for and does a lot of the things that we like to see, then, we're going to be that much more proactive to try to get out there and watch you play live.
Right. And so from a quick highlight film perspective, do you want to see all in-game highlights? Because I've seen highlight films where kids intersperse some of their plays with themselves at the wall? You know, like would that help, or are you mostly looking for things in game?
Yeah, I mean, mostly in game. I mean, the one thing, I guess, if you're doing something more that's on your own, if you can show the skill set a little bit, I mean, there's something to be said for that. But for the most part, on a highlight film, I mean, we can evaluate what we need to make that decision on whether or not we'd want to move forward with things and come see you play live.
Right. Gotcha. Makes sense. Well, Coach, listen, I appreciate you taking the time to come on, especially I know you got a game on Saturday. But there's one question that I've asked everybody who's come on the show. What are 3 things everyone should be doing every day to get better at whatever it is they do? Doesn't have to just be about lacrosse.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we talked a little bit about the goal setting. I mean, that's been one for me that's always been huge in my life, and, certainly feels just extremely important to set your goals and read them on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. I mean, whatever it is that, that you're pursuing and have a passion for, I think just getting a plan in place is always the first step to success. So it's something I always did as a young athlete and have carried it with me through to today, and certainly do with our team, like I mentioned, on an individual and team level. So I think that's kind of number one for me. I think just enjoy what you're doing. I mean, sometimes no matter what it is in life, when we're working hard and trying to do our best to be successful, there's stress that we put on ourselves, and, at times it can feel like it's not fun, but, it takes effort to have that mindset and to, make sure that you are enjoying yourself and everything that you're doing. So, if you're not going to have fun doing what you're doing, then find something else, in my opinion.
Right.
But last thing I'd say, I mean, just, have an open mind with whatever it is you're pursuing. I think a lot of times we get caught up in thinking we all know the answers to things and how we should do things, and, think that we have it all figured out. But I think we all realize as we get older and older with anything in life, as wise as we might think we're becoming, there's more and more answers that we all have to figure out. So
right.
I think just keeping an open mind and listening to the people around you, and being willing to try different things in different ways to see what it is going to take to be successful.
Right. Absolutely. Coach, listen, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time. Good luck on Saturday, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe. It was great.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the GameChanger Lacrosse Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Uvoli. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Uvoli. You can find more episodes of the GameChanger Lacrosse Podcast on The Season at theseason.gc.com. If you like the podcast, please take a second to give it a positive review on iTunes. This helps more people find the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at GC Sports. And if you're a coach, a parent, or you run a travel or club team, check out GameChanger Team Manager in the App Store. It's an essential, all-in-one scheduling and communication app for lacrosse coaches and parents. GameChanger Team Manager is free, it's easy to use, and it doesn't serve ads. Learn more at gc.com/team manager. Until next time, keep working and keep getting better.